Okay, it started.
ॐ यो ब्रह्माणं विदधाति पूर्वं यो वै वेदांश्च प्रहिणोति तस्मै तं हदेवम् आत्मबुद्धिप्रकाशं मुमुक्षुर्वै शरणमहं प्रपद्ये असतो मा सद्गमय तमसो मा ज्योतिर्गमय मृत्योर्मा अमृतं गमय ॐ शान्तिः 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 गुरुर्ब्रह्मा गुरुर्विष्णुः गुरुर्देवो महेश्वरः गुरुः साक्षात् परब्रह्म तस्मै श्रीगुरवे नमः गुरवे सर्वलोकानां भिषजे भवरोगिणां निधये सर्वविद्यानां श्रीदक्षिणामूर्तये नमः. Okay, so do we have any questions for today's discussion? What do we have from the attendees? No questions? Okay, so there was one lady who asked about spiritual progress last week. So is that lady there? Yeah, okay. Oh, right. So if there are no questions, I thought I will elaborate on some of those qualities that I had mentioned. Basically, I had mentioned four different sources for the collection of qualities that I was referring to. So one source is the Bhagavad Gita 13th chapter, starting from shloka number 7 to 12, beginning from the shloka which starts like Amanitvam Adambhitvam. And so in that section, under the title Jnanam, Bhagavan Krishna lists about 20 qualities. So I'll first cover that part. After that, we will go to the other two or three sources. Okay, so Amanitvam. Amanitvam is some kind of an ego, arrogance. Um, there are three qualities that are given in this list. I'll combine them even though they are not in that order. Amanitvam, Adambhitvam, Anahankaraha. Those are the three qualities, and they are basically some kind of an ego at the mental, verbal, and physical levels. So the ego at the mental level is called Amanitvam. Mani is someone who thinks very highly of himself. So this is not to be mistaken as a criticism of self-confidence. Okay, self-confidence has its place, and self-confidence is generally backed up by a sense of realism, that a person feels confident because of certain things that he has achieved in the past, and so he is confident that when similar situations come in the future, he can handle them neatly. That is self confidence. But then when a person becomes too self centered and keeps projecting on himself a lot of achievements that he really doesn't have, that becomes some kind of an egoistic attitude, bordering on arrogance. Very often there are people who are arrogant but don't manage not to express their arrogance. So they have that arrogance in their mind, and they're very careful not to let it out in their words or actions, but they still think very highly about themselves. So that is amanitvam, that is manitvam. So amanitvam is the avoidance of that attitude in the mind. So in your mind, you are still quite humble. So I would say amanitvam is another way of saying humility. Humility here is amanitvam, humility at the mental level. Adambhitvam is the humility at the physical level. So a lot of people, you can see that, they always dress, they dress to kill, they say that. They always wear expensive clothes and expensive ornaments, and they show off their brand watches and brand spectacles and goggles and this and that. And they carry, if it is a case of a lady, they'll carry expensive handbags or other accessories. You will find men wearing branded shoes, extremely expensive branded shoes. So they're all a physical display of a certain arrogance. That is dambhitvam. So adambhitvam is humility at a physical level, and anahankaraha is the same thing at a verbal level. So when people talk, very often they talk, in a self-centered way. I have done this. I'm great. I can do this. I know this person. I know that person. All those kind of verbal display of their superiority. That is uh, ahankaraha. Anahankaraha is the humility, and here that word is specific at the verbal level, spoken level, language level. So amanitvam, adambhitvam, anahankaraha. Those three are about humility. Then ahimsa, the fourth virtue is ahimsa. So ahimsa, again, we deal with ahimsa at three levels. It is the avoidance of violence at the mental, verbal, and physical level. So at the mental level, don't think of harming anybody. Always have a well-wishing thought for others. And at a verbal level, always talk politely and kindly. Don't use harsh words. And at a physical level, of course, don't go about uh, hitting or causing hurt to others physically. That is ahimsa. Then kshantihi. Fifth quality is kshantihi. Kshantihi has different flavors, and kshanti really means patience, forbearance, a certain shall we say ability to put up with physical and mental difficulties. All that is kshanti. Okay, so patience, basically, what in some other contexts we might call kshama or titiksha. These are the equivalent words: kshanti, kshama, titiksha. But then kshama we tend to use in a very specific sense. If someone has hurt you, forgiving them is kshama. But we use the word kshanti in a much more broader sense. So even when you are going through some physical stress or mental stress, um, the ability to tolerate that without giving out any adverse reaction or violent reaction, you know. So we have in our tradition a lot of these tapasya, like fasting for a day or fasting for a few days, fasting on Mondays, fasting on Saturdays, and so on. So, and then there are other forms of vratam where you sleep on the floor or you spend the night without sleeping. So all these tapasyas are basically to inculcate and train us to be able to increase our tolerance for physical and mental difficulties and hardships. So kshanti is a quality that displays this kind of um, tolerance, the ability to uh, absorb hardships without complaining. That is kshanti. And kshanti also is used in a different context, that when you are waiting for something to happen, and it's going to happen sooner or later, but you are You are very impatient that the event should happen today. So that kind of patience is also covered under Shanti. This will come under Shanti, Titiksha, and all that. So the ability to control oneself even under adverse circumstances. I would put it that way. Generally speaking, the ability to control oneself under adverse circumstances. That is Kshanti. Then Arjavam. Arjavam comes from the word Ruju, and Ruju really means a straight line. Straight line without any bend. So the Arjavam here refers to a straight character. A straight character as opposed to a crooked character. Okay, so Arjavam again can be expressed at many levels. And one very common experience of Arjavam that is expected is when you commit something to somebody and you are not able to then keep up that commitment, you are required to go back to that person and inform that person sufficiently in advance that, look, I made such and such a commitment to you, but I'm sorry, for various reasons, you can explain the reasons, I am not able to fulfill that commitment. I will do it in a few more days or few more weeks or whatever. So that habit of acknowledging one's commitment made in the past, the acknowledging the difficulty in meeting that commitment and reaffirming that commitment to a future date, that is one example of Arjavam. So very commonly, we have people who say, yeah, I'll come on Friday evening, and then they never turn up, and they don't give you a call to tell you they are not coming. So you end up waiting for them for 2, 3, 4 hours, wasting all your evening. That's a very common example. Yeah. Or somebody borrows a book from you saying that they'll return the book in a few days or a week, but then after a few months also the book never comes to you. So these are all small examples where Arjavam is lacking. So that is Arjavam. So Arjavam, you can say integrity. If you want to translate Arjavam in English, the nearest good word is integrity. Displaying integrity in all your transactions. Yeah. And we also have a different view or a slightly other view of Arjavam. It is the harmonization of your thought, word, and action. That is also called Arjavam. Harmonizing your words, thoughts, and action is called Arjavam. Okay. So these are all different ways of explaining Arjavam. Then Acharyopasanam. Acharyopasanam is basically treating your guru with respect. And guru is anyone from whom you learn anything. Okay. So it is not necessarily the spiritual guru, even somebody at your workplace who kind of acts as your mentor, you can treat him as your guru. And basically it is an extension of being respectful to people with whom you deal with. Okay, Acharyopasanam. And this is especially true for spiritual gurus, because in the matter of spirituality, you value the teaching as much as you would value the teacher, and vice versa. Yeah, so the two go together. So if you don't value the teaching, you won't value the teacher, and if you don't value the teacher, you really not value the teaching. So by developing a certain sense of devotion and dedication to the teacher, you are also reinforcing your dedication and commitment to the teachings that come to you from him. Okay, that is Acharyopasanam. This is also called Shraddha in some other context. Okay, but Shraddha has a much broader, shall we say, interpretation, because Shraddha extends to the faith you repose in the teaching itself. You take the teaching really seriously, even if you don't really understand, the teaching in the beginning. That is Shraddha. But Acharya Upasanam is very specific to the respect being paid to the Guru. That is Acharya Upasanam. Then Shaucham. Shaucham means basically cleanliness. And here we talk about cleanliness at multiple levels. We have cleanliness again at the physical level, wearing clean dress, taking regular bath, making sure that the body odor, is minimized or eliminated. And also importantly, keeping your surroundings clean, keeping the house clean, keeping your environment outside the house also clean. Make sure that you don't litter on the road or wherever. So all that is shaucham, and it includes purity of thought and purity of words. Exactly like how ahimsa and this amanitvam, adambhitvam, and anahankaraha, exactly how they apply at the mental, verbal, and physical level. This shaucham also will apply at the mental, verbal, and physical level. Then sthiryam. So sthiryam is especially a very important quality. It means you are quite committed and firm in whatever you are pursuing. It's not that a lot of people have this new year resolution. On the 1st of January they will decide, okay, this year I will do this something something. It could be about weight reduction, it could be about doing some exercise, it could be about cutting some spending habits, it could be anything. But then after the first few days they completely lose track of their commitment, and they even forget it. And so that is not sthiryam. So that is fickle mindedness. Whereas sthiryam means once you make a commitment, you hold on to that commitment in a steadfast manner. You are really committed to your commitment, and you pursue your commitment with a lot of persistence. That is sthiryam. And that's very important in spiritual progress also, because this whole spiritual journey is a very long journey. It can take several years, or in some cases maybe even several janmas. And if you are not steadfast in your commitment to the spiritual journey, you can try for a few weeks or a few months and then eventually give up, and then you can go around in a completely different direction. So staying put on a committed path is a very important quality, what we call perseverance. So that is called sthiryam. Okay, then atma vinigraha. Atma vinigraha generally means control over the self, and this control over the self again can be control of your thoughts, control of your sense organs, control of your speech, for instance. Generally being aware of your state of emotion, uh, all that. So self control, you can I can talk for a few hours on self control. There are so many different aspects, but I'm sure all of you understand self control is really a very critical characteristic for success anywhere in any field, and especially in the field of spirituality. Because giving in to distraction is a very common symptom of lack of self control. No, we have today, unfortunately, we have so much of distraction in every direction that it's very easy to get distracted in a few minutes. And so that kind of a distracted attitude is very inimical to making progress in spiritual path. And that's of course very inimical to making progress in any field. That's a different story. But here in this meeting we are talking more about spiritual progress. So being insulating yourself from distractions and controlling yourself that is atma vinigraha. Then indriya artheshu vairagyam. Indriya artheshu vairagyam. So this is vairagyam in a general sense is about knowing what is, there is a typical definition of vairagyam in atma bodha and tattva bodha and all those texts. It is nitya anitya vastu vivekah. That is the real definition of Viveka, Nitya Anistya Vastu Viveka, and Vairagyam. Vairagyam is in the Anitya Vastu, reduce your attachment. That is Viveka Vairagyam. So Viveka and Vairagyam, they generally go together. And here what we are saying is, if you have to develop a strong Viveka and Vairagya, you have to start somewhere. You have to start small and then slowly extend that habit to other things. So the easiest thing is to start with what you like the most. You know, all of us have some pet, shall we call, what is that? Addictions. We have some pet addictions, and so initially you can identify one or two such pet addictions and try to overcome them. You know, it could be taking too much of coffee or too much of tea. It could be, you know, taking a lot of chocolates or sweets. It could be any of those simple things, and slowly you extend that, and try to live with as little comforts as possible. You know, I gave that example of you know, pursuing some vratam, like giving up food, giving up sleep, and sleeping on the floor and all that. So those are all also oriented towards increasing your vairagyam. Vairagyam is best described as the ability to live with bare minimum necessities. You know, my guru would say, you treat all your necessities as luxuries. I think today we are living in a world, we are treating a lot of luxuries as necessities, whereas in a spiritually progressive environment, most necessities would be called or deemed as luxuries. So for instance, if you have to sit on the floor for a couple of hours listening to a lecture, not looking for a cushion to, you know, pad up your knees or your ankle, is one small example of giving up some small comfort. Yeah, instead of sitting on the chair, you sit on the mat or on the floor. These are all very small examples. So basically, indriya artheshu vairagyam. So whatever your sense organs are going out and reaching out for, try to reduce and control them, and m- moderate them. That is indriya artheshu vairagyam. Then anahankaraha we already dealt with. Then janma mrityu jara vyadhi dukkha dosha anudarshanam. That's a long sentence. That's actually one full line of the shloka, and that is one quality. Janma mrityu jara vyadhi dukkha dosha anudarshanam. So it is basically to develop an attitude that this cycle of birth and rebirth, you know, janma mrityu. Janma is birth and mrityu is death. And death is obviously followed by a rebirth, punarjanma. Okay. Then between janma and mrityu, you have jara, which is old age, and vyadhi, which is disease. And to view all of these as dukkha. So that dukkha has to go with everything. Janma dukkha, mrityu dukkha, jara dukkha, vyadhi dukkha. So look at all of them as dukkha, and therefore as a dosha. Dosha is a defect. Anudarshanam. To develop a kind of world view, a kind of view about life, that somehow I should get out of this unending cycle of birth and death. That is the main import of this quality. Janma mrityu jara vyadhi dukkha doshanudarshanam. So anudarshanam means to have a view, and that word anu actually means as per the shastra. So the shastra tells us that birth and death is a pain, but most of us don't remember the pain that we underwent in the previous janmas by way of the previous births and previous deaths. I mean, we may not even remember this janma's birth. Okay, so we cannot know about the painfulness of the birth and death cycle unless you come to Shastra and know from the Shastra. So that Anudarshanam means to align your view with the Shastra, that birth, old age, disease, death, all these are basically very painful, and they have to be treated as a dosha. And the pursuit of spirituality is to make sure that you get out of this cycle. So that is the overall import of that quality. Then asaktihi, the next quality is asaktihi. Asaktihi basically means uh, acting free from all crutches. Crutch is a support. And when I say crutches, I am not necessarily talking about somebody whose leg is not okay and they move around with a crutch because of handicap. No, not that kind of a crutch. If you examine, if all of us examine our own way of life, we have a lot of dependencies on so many things. Without this I won't feel happy, without that I won't feel happy. Yeah. So for instance, let's say somebody is living in India where the climate is not so good, or even here in Germany, when during the 3 or 4 weeks of peak summer, when the temperatures go to 30, 35, 36 and all that, a lot of people complain about the heat, and they want to have an AC or fan or whatever. In even in that kind of a heat, if you are able to manage without the air conditioning or fan, that is, I would say, one example of asakti. So saktaha means somebody who is dependent. This is not to be mistaken with shaktaha. Shakti is different from sakti. Asakti means a dependence which is bordering on some kind of an addiction. You cannot live without that. That is asakti. So asakti means trying to live, again, a bare minimum essentials is what you need to support yourself. No, that is the what we call in English a stoic way of life. Stoic, a stoic way of life. And in English, the word stoic is very often used to denote a kind of an emotional detachment. But I am using the word stoic here not only for emotional detachment but also for a certain physical, dependence on others. There are some people who always need 2 or 3 people around them to help them with this and that. They cannot do any task entirely on their own independently. So that is also a kind of an asakti. Yeah. So asakti is trying to be with yourself. Feel comfortable with yourself when you are alone. Of course, that is going to come in another quality later, but it kind of borders on that. And if you see all these qualities that I am talking about, they're all kind of overlapping at some level or the other. So there is no clear border line where one quality will be ending and the other quality will be beginning. So they're all kind of overlapping and touching each other. So the meaning that I give in one case may apply to the meaning for a different quality also. Okay, now asakti is over. Then putra dara grihadishu anabhishwanga. Okay, this is again a very specific case of the indriyartheshu vairagyam. So when I said indriyartheshu vairagyam, that referred to a general vairagyam. Here it is very specifically addressed to the attachment or the emotional attachment is actually a very mild word. Some people have so much of emotional, shall we say, yeah, so emotional, even connect is not a correct word. They have that attachment to their wife, children, the house, the properties. their car, whatever, that is so strong. For instance, I remember a particular case where uh, a friend of mine lost his father, and I then went to the funeral of that person. And then my friend had a few sisters. One of them got so emotional that she hugged the dead body of the father and said, let me also come with you, let them burn me also, and all that. That's a very, very sad scene, and you can relate to that. Yeah, I mean, the father is gone, the girl feels so desperate and she's crying out like that. But some people really take that to the serious level, that just because somebody in the family died, you find people committing suicide. Or in recent times, you have heard a lot of cases where somebody failed in an exam, and because of that they committed suicide. So these are all things which talk about an extreme level of attachment to something. That is something that has to be avoided and reduced. So that putradara grihadishu anabhishvangaha, this abhishvangaha really means that you treat them as though they are an extension of your body. That is the meaning of the abhishvanga. So you don't treat your children or your spouse or your parents as somebody different from your personality, but you treat them as though they are an extension of your own body. So that level of attachment is something that is not desirable. So that putradara grihadishu anabhishvanga, that is one quality. Then nityam cha samachittatvam ishtanishtopapatishu. So ishta anishta upapattishu. What does it mean? Upapatti means any incident or happening. So ishta upapatti, anishta upapatti means favorable happenings, unfavorable happenings. Okay. Then samachittatvam. Samachittatvam is to have the ability to take favorable and unfavorable developments in a kind of an equanimous mind, with a balanced mind, without having any huge emotional upheavals. That is the samachittatvam. Nityam, the word nityam means consistently. So when you try to develop that quality of equanimity, you may be successful to doing it for a few days, but then after that you may slightly go back and give up and all that. So you have to consistently practice this, taking the pluses and minuses of life, the ups and downs of life, in a very balanced and equanimous mind, without too much of ups and downs, emotional upheavals. That is samachittatvam. Okay. Then ananya yogena mayi avyabhicharini bhakti. In the shloka, it is not in this order. The shloka will read like mayi chananya yogena bhaktiravyabhicharini. That is the line in the shloka. I have kind of reordered the words to make it a little more prose like. So bhaktihi, bhaktihi, again, this 13th chapter comes right after the 12th chapter, which is bhakti yoga. So in the 12th chapter, bhakti yoga is defined in a very comprehensive manner. And so the word bhakti here actually refers to all the teachings of the 12th chapter. Okay. So if I have to do the 12th chapter, I'll need a full 1.5 hours for that. So I'm not going into that. But just keep it in mind that the word bhakti here is a reference to the complete 12th chapter teaching. And avyabhicharini bhakti means a bhakti that does not deviate. Vyabhicharam means deviation. Avyabhicharini bhakti means a one pointed bhakti. And ananya yogena. Ananya yogena means without taking recourse to any other secondary pursuit. That is single pointedness again. Mayi, Krishna says here, the meaning on himself. So this is basically what in some other context we will call Ishvara Pranidhana. The word Ishvara Pranidhana comes in the Yama Niyama of the Ashtanga Yoga, and that Ishvara Pranidhana is the Avyabhicharini Bhakti that 13th chapter talks about. So it is the one-pointed devotion towards the divine, towards divinity. That is Avyabhicharini Bhakti. Then Vivikta Desha Sevitvam. Vivikta Desha Sevitvam means once in a while, on a regular basis, you go to some place where you are alone. You go there without anybody accompanying you, without carrying your headset and YouTube or mobile phone or whatever. You spend time with yourself and get used to the idea of being alone. That is a very important quality that one has to develop, and it has very practical connotations, because as one gets older, you will find that more and more time is spent alone. And for some people, or for many people, that can drive them very crazy, because all along they've been used to spending their entire day and even the 24 hours day in the company of so many people, that suddenly they find themselves alone. Even for a few hours, they don't know what to do with their time, and that is a very difficult situation to be in if you are not used to spending time alone all by yourself. So here it is not about listening to some lecture or reading some book or whatever. This is basically a quality one has to develop, because by spending time alone without any activity, you get time to reflect upon yourself and do introspection and eventually engage in meditation. Okay, so this is a very important practice for those who want to do meditation for a long time. And in meditation, of course, you have to be alone. There's no such thing called group meditation, because if there is group meditation, it becomes just a group get together and no meditation. So meditation is best done alone, and in order to have that tenacity to sit in meditation for a long time, one has to be comfortable with oneself. So that is Vivikta Desha Sevitvam. Aratihi Janasamsadi is very related to that. Janasamsadi means a gathering of a large number of people, a get together. Aratihi means Ratihi means one who is attracted to. Aratihi means not getting attracted to. So the habit of avoiding get-togethers to the extent possible. These two go together. That's Vivikta Desha Sevitvam and Aratir Janasamsidi, they go together, because if you have to be together, you can't be in a get. No, if you have to be alone, you can't be in a get together. So they actually go together. But Krishna somehow mentions these two separately as two separate qualities. One has to develop both. Yeah, because sometimes you may be alone because you have no choice, and if you had a choice, if you did have a party somewhere, you would go and attend it. So it's very often difficult for people to decline an invitation to a party or get together. So in addition to staying alone, you also have to develop a certain habit of declining invitations to get together once in a while. That is the Aratir Janasamsadi. Then Adhyatma Jnana Nityatvam. Adhyatma Jnana Nityatvam. Tattva Jnanartha Darshanam. Again, these two are very closely related. So Adhyatma Jnanam is what we call self-knowledge, Brahma Vidya, Atma Vidya and all that. Adhyatma Jnana Nityatvam means it again goes back to your Viveka Vairagya quality, to realize that this Adhyatma Jnanam is the only eternal lasting thing in this world. Everything else is ephemeral. Everything is something that will come and go. Okay, Agamapayi. There is a word in Bhagavad Gita somewhere in the second or third chapter. Agamapayi means things which come and go. So everything else in the world is agama payi, they come and they go. But this adhyatma jnanam is the only permanent, eternal thing that will stay with you. That attitude, that knowledge is adhyatma jnana nityatvam. Then tattva jnana artha darshanam. And finally, this atma jnanam has to be internalized, and you have to convince yourself intellectually and then also train yourself emotionally. So this is basically the culmination of jnana yoga, as what we call mananam and nididhyasanam. So the tattva jnanartha darshanam is basically the outcome of nididhyasanam, and nididhyasanam is nothing but the the behavioral assimilation of the teachings of Vedanta. The behavioral assimilation of the teachings of Vedanta is Tattva Jnanartha Darshanam. Tattva Jnanam is the same as Adhyatma Jnanam. This Artha means the full significance, and Darshanam is to be able to appreciate it with your own full intellect and emotion. That is Darshanam. Yeah. So these are the 20 qualities that you would come across in the 13th chapter of Bhagavad Gita from sloka number 7 onwards. Okay, so I'm done with this part. We can, take up any questions or discussions. Now everybody is muted, so I don't know if somebody is trying to talk in muted thing. So it will be helpful if there are no questions, at least. Yeah, Shwetambriji, you can
Uh,
unmute and talk.
yes. Namaste, sir. Sir, I had a question. You said about these 20 qualities. One, how should I put it? The one factor is where it is physical. I'll take
Mm.
one simple example that I can think of. You said the cleanliness example. You
Yeah.
said you have to keep yourself, your body, and maybe your surroundings and your house, everything clean. That is one
Mm.
physical aspect. And then we have the spiritual aspect where I should be
Yeah.
able to keep my mind or my thoughts clean.
Yeah.
Right? So, is it then interdependent? That is to say, if I don't, I'll just take this random example that if I'm not keeping my house clean, say I'm
Mm.
not keeping
Mm.
my house clean, and but still I think I am clean at my soul or at my thoughts and my spirit. It,
Mm.
is it okay, or this is a kind of something which is opposite or something which is not acceptable?
See, in all these 20 qualities and all the other qualities also, there can be different levels of observance and practice depending on your ability, the availability of resources at your end, and so on. Okay, so you don't have to be clinically clean, like scrubbing your hand 20 times a day. That's not the level of cleanliness we're talking about. We're talking about basic hygiene, cleanliness. And I think fortunately all our Indian families, we come up with this habit of taking a bath early in the morning, and making sure that we have at least one bath a day, if not twice. Yeah. And we also have this concept of I don't know how you would call it in other languages. In Tamil, we call it madi and acharam. That means at least for the limited time when you perform a puja, you don't wear previously worn clothes, but you wear a freshly washed cloth. And if you go to some very pious families, they have a cloth line somewhere high up on the ceiling where the clothes are dried up, and they won't even touch the cloth with their hand if they have not taken a bath. They'll have a stick with which they'll remove the cloth from the cloth line and all that. I don't know if that practice is prevalent in other parts of India, but it is very much prevalent in southern states, Andhra, Tamil Nadu, Karnataka, all these places. I'm not familiar with how things are done in Maharashtra, but I'm sure this is not an alien concept.
In
So
Maharashtra, we call it sovla. Sovla.
yeah,
What you call in Mari, we call it sovla. We have
yeah,
the exactly the same
yeah.
concept.
Correct. So I would imagine that this is quite common across most states in India. In the north, you would see people wearing wet cloth. They'll go to the river, take a dip, and then go to the temple with the wet cloth. So the wet cloth is supposed to be muddy. Okay. So for various purposes, various levels of muddy is prescribed. So I mean, you don't have to be very extreme in that sense, but a general level of cleanliness is what is expected. See, the idea is, if you are personally clean but your surroundings are not clean, then let's say you're sitting for meditation, then you could have some ant or bees or other insects because of the dirt, which will disturb you and distract you. Okay, so having them all going together helps you, because that creates a certain conducive environment which is helpful for your sadhana. That is the whole idea. Yeah, yeah. Priyanka ji.
Yeah, namaste, sir. I had a question. Like, you mentioned that, like the disinterest or denying the invitation of the get-togethers or kind of such things. So, a
Hmm?
person who is like very outgoing or who likes to be around people,
Hmm?
uh, how would you suggest, like, to maintain the balance between that?
See, there is no single answer. See, we are not saying that getting together and attending parties is bad. That's not the idea. Okay, so we are talking about a certain set of qualities that a person needs to develop in order to sustainably be on the spiritual journey for a good length of time. Okay, so it is more a matter of abhyasa, if you understand the word abhyasa. So one has to train oneself in various different disciplines. So if you are an outgoing person, likes to be in the company of people, maybe you can then choose to attend get-togethers which are probably more oriented towards bhajan, puja, and all that. Yeah, and so it's also a question of not necessarily dropping your get-together count from say 10 or 20 to 0 in 1 day or 2 days. It's always a gradual journey. You can always look at what kind of parties you are attending, what kind of friends you are meeting. You can even go back and look at what kind of discussions, small talk happens in these parties and meetings. Are these really conducive to your spiritual pursuit? Is it some kind of a hindrance? And try to avoid those kind of groups of friends where the discussion is more about gossiping and backbiting and all that. And maybe choose the kind of friends whose topic of conversation is more conducive to spirituality. It all depends on what you do currently and what you wish to do going forward. Yeah,
Thank you.
right. Anybody else? No questions? Yes, ma'am. Shvetambari ji.
So what is the basic sadhana that we can start from? What is the basic sadhana that I can do in my daily routine?
Well, I presume you already have some kind of a puja paddhati that you're following. Uh, if you're not following, then you have to learn something and start following something. But something that will, require 5 or 10 minutes of your time on a daily basis, If you start doing it regularly without fail, that's a good starting point. And then depending on how your interest develops, you can, expand that 15 to 20 to 30, 40 minutes, whatever, depending on how much time you have at your disposal. Maybe on a working day you may not find much more time, so you can try to expand that puja time during the weekends. And maybe if morning is not convenient, you can do it in the evening. So it's all, you have to adjust your own schedule based on your daily routine. And typically what I used to do is, and even something that I continue to do, so I started reading a lot of these texts like Upanishads, Bhagavad Gita, and all that. And so over the years, I have been reading so many texts that if I want to read all of them on one day, I'll need about 4 to 5 hours. So then what I had to do was I had to kind of draw a schedule that on certain days I will do this part, I'll on certain other days I'll do some other part, and so on and so on. And the weekends are slightly more heavy. So if on an ordinary day I would do 10-15 minutes, on a weekend I'll probably do 45 minutes or 1 hour. So that's the way I kind of distribute my puja part paddhati. And that's something all of you can do, depending on your own, conveniences and your own preferences. Okay, right. If there are no more questions, we'll probably close the call for today. And then next week I can talk about the 26 or 27 qualities in Bhagavad Gita chapter 16. I'm not sure how many of you had the Bhagavad Gita open when I was talking about all these qualities. If you had the Bhagavad Gita book online or in print next to you when I was talking, you could actually follow the shlokas and verses as I was talking. Even if that is not the case, I suggest you get online. There are so many versions available. All that you have to do is download the 13th chapter and look for the slokas 7 to 12, and then you will get all these things that I mentioned. And you can probably make a brief note on some piece of paper and go through them so that you don't forget. And these are all very important tips that Krishna gives. These are all very practical tips. And similarly, the 6th chapter of Bhagavad Gita also gives very practical tips on how to sit in meditation and how to do meditation and all that. So, if possible, one of these days we'll talk about 6th chapter also. But next week, I think I'll go to the 16th chapter, the first 4 shlokas or 3.5 shlokas, beginning from Abhayam Sattva Samshuddhihi. So Krishna talks about some 26, 27 qualities. We'll take them up for discussion. And you will find a lot of overlap between that 27 and this 20. So it's not that it is 20 plus 27, 47. It will be a little less. Maybe 35, 38, 40, whatever. Yeah. Right. So can we close the class for today?
So I had one request. Is it possible for you to explain these chapters from Bhagavad Gita to us as our discussion topic?
What exactly would you mean by that?
With the chapters which are very much related to Bhakti Yoga or maybe Jnana Yoga.
Okay.
Because I have Bhagavad Gita at home, but since I'm not able to understand any word of Sanskrit, that's very difficult, and it is in Marathi, but still the Marathi is also very difficult. It's a high Marathi, and I am not able to understand everything. So I also think there are so many things to read in between the lines. So, is it possible for you to take up one chapter at a time and explain the relevant aspects related to Bhakti Yoga or maybe Jnana Yoga?
Yeah, what I'll do is, the thing about Bhagavad Gita is that even though there are 18 chapters, the content of these chapters are not really kind of watertight. So you will find Karma Yoga discussed in multiple chapters. You will find Karma Yoga, Jnana Yoga discussed in multiple chapters. Okay, you will find many of the other topics also discussed across chapters. So even though the third chapter is called Karma Yoga, the topic of Karma Yoga is not limited to third chapter. So you will find Karma Yoga teachings in the second chapter and the fourth, fifth chapters also. Okay, so what I will do is, let me go to the 16th chapter, those 27 qualities next week, and after that I will cover the 12th chapter in a comprehensive way, because 12th chapter is a small chapter, 20 shlokas. So covering 12th chapter maybe 1 hour, maybe 2 hours, depends on how elaborately we go through. We can cover in 1 or 2 sessions, and then I will spend some time on the 6th chapter for Dhyana Yoga meditation, and then I will see if I can give a general summary of Bhagavad Gita over 2, 3, 4 sessions, again depending on you know how many questions come and so on. So Bhagavad Gita, I don't believe taking it chapter by chapter will be helpful, for the reason I mentioned, because a chapter is constructed in a particular context, but doesn't mean that it has only a particular topic which is being discussed. In one chapter, you will find a lot of topics getting mixed up.
Okay, sir.
Yeah, right. So let's go with that. So we will then chant the closing prayers, and we'll conclude the class today. Yeah. Om Purnamadaha Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnamevavasishyate Sarvesham Swastirбhavatu Sarvesham Shantirbhavatu Sarvesham Purnam Bhavatu Sarvesham Mangalam Bhavatu सर्वेपि सुखिनः सन्तु सर्वे सन्तु निरामयाः सर्वे भद्राणि पश्यन्तु मा कश्चित् दुःखभाग् भवेत्। ओम शांति शांति शांति।